Hi, welcome back to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I'm the streamer for this stream, and we work on a Django application. And tonight we're going to work on a view that I have for the app that I'm working on. So I'll get to that in a minute. But I guess if you would like to follow me, keep track of me, there are ways to do so. There's hey JForce bot, welcome. There are ways to do so. I've got accounts on Twitter and GitHub and all of the places. You can see the kind of the URLs and links up above if you want to do that. I also have a Patreon account if you want to support me that way. But that's all we need to really say on that front too. Although I guess I should give you where to go if you're interested. It's patreon.com/mblehman. Before I get into things today, let's see. What do I want to do? Let's start with a question of the day. Let's do something different. And the question of the day that I was thinking about is just a way to, see where people are. Is what kind of views do you use? Do you use class-based views, function-based views, and if you have a preference of one of the over the other, why is that? So let me jot this down for anybody joining us later. And so we can have some discussion there if we want. So let's talk briefly about the actual thing that we're going to work on. So I've been working on a homeschool application for my family, and my children have recently started homeschool, and I'm building a wife. I'm not building a wife. I already have a wife. I'm building an application for my wife. Geez. And one of the things that's part of that app is a weekly view of everything that needs to happen. And currently, let's look at it so you can get an idea of what's going on. So we will start up the application here and go to port 5000 where everything is at. Yeah, come down here. So this view is like the main interface. I've even called it app rather than week or something like that, because it is the place where once you log in as a user, you will be dumped to this page. And the idea behind it is to give an ability to look at everything that's going on for this particular school week for both of the students. I have two children, and so they're both in school, and for each of the students, and there are different grade levels. And this view is fine as is. Like this part's done. But the request that I got from my spouse was that she would like to be able to look forward and backwards in time if she needs to do that. More likely forward than backwards. Backwards would be more for review, I guess, but sometimes she pulls work ahead of schedule. So maybe it's a Friday and my son is really doing a good job with reading, writing, whatever the subject, and she wants to do some extra work. So she wants to look ahead at the other stuff and mark it off as done. So she needs a quick ability to be able to do that. And that is what we're looking to add tonight. So what I'm trying to do, and I've got it defined in a GitHub issue. Let's see, this is the issue of the night. Is to make some navigation that will show up in the app, and that navigation will have to then go to a new week. So we have to do the work to add that navigation to the main thing. I have white letters in a white background. Well, that's interesting. I shouldn't. And maybe I'm in a different browser environment than you are, but let's take a look. Search for myself because I'm lazy. The JForce, it should be black letters, or excuse me, white on a black background. That's what I have for the code stuff. But wow, would you look at that? That really rendered super poorly. That's very weird. I will take a look at that after the stream is over, because that is not the way that my site has worked in the past. Wow, and it's not even consistent. That's bizarre. Okay, that's worth checking out. Like, what the heck happened? I wonder if it is anytime there was a use of a bash code chunk, that if it's somehow defaulting to a different background color for some reason. Because you can see down here, no, that's not the same. So something weird happened. Well, thanks for pointing that out, JForce. And I might be pronouncing your handle wrong, but it looks like JForce to me. So if not, you can feel free to correct me, but I'll check that out later. But thanks for bringing it up. So what I want to do is add the navigation. And the navigation is going to be similar to what is on this daily view. And the daily view, once it comes up here, will show what I'm talking about, where we have this main header area over here, and then there's some UI that's there. You can see scroll buttons. Yeah, like I can highlight this, and there's definitely code there. So I'm not sure what you're seeing exactly, but this is my viewpoint of my website right now. It's definitely wrong. I don't know what caused it, but I'll look into it deeper. So this this page right here has the UI that I want. Yeah, I might in case, you know, I trust you to a degree, but I don't want to get I'll put things on private mode if you decide to share a link to a screenshot, which is fine, and but please don't be nefarious, I guess, is all I request. At any rate, this is the UI that I want, and I want to have something for each week as kind of the navigation that will show up here for the weekly view. And so there'll be a link that says week of some date, and then on a pipe character, and then says week of another date. She said that she doesn't need to look, doesn't need the UI to have multiple weeks of navigation, which was different from this daily view, which she wanted to be able to go quickly 2 days ahead and 2 days behind. I don't know. She's just my customer. That's not the UI choice I would have made, but I'm happy to make it for her. So the first thing that I need to do is put in those two links, and they're not going to go anywhere yet. Let me switch to this secret mode in case that link. Okay, cool. Not that I don't trust you, but JForce, but I don't trust you yet. Wow, that is fascinating. I'll definitely take a look at that afterwards. I don't think the scroll bars. I think I have it so that or maybe what browser are you coming from? I guess is a good question. It might be that your browser is showing scroll bars by default. That looks like maybe a Windows scroll bar, whereas I'm on Mac OS, so maybe I don't normally see them. Chrome. Okay. Well, good to know. I will definitely check it out. So getting back to Ubuntu, that helps too. Thank you. Getting back to the thing we're going to work on tonight, though, is this weekly view, and I'm going to put the navigation in there, and we're going to start with links that don't go anywhere. So I need to get in. I need to get in two things. I need to get in 2 pieces of data to the weekly view that is calculating the week date to show in the UI, and we can start. The first step I'm going to do is start by like mocking out the UI, just putting in hard-coded values, because we won't have the data in the context for the view yet, and then we will take the next step and add the data to power those links, and then we'll do the step after that to actually give those links a destination, an actual URL to go to. So it's kind of an incremental approach to development, so you don't have to have all the pieces working at once. So let's take a look at what we can do. The view itself is called the app view, and I have an app HTML file. And it's not a very big file right now. Thankfully, the UI is not very complicated. And we're going to bring up the daily view as well, because that has the kind of navigation that I'm looking for, and I need to make a change into how the stuff is structured. So you can see here that the call out, the thing that I want to highlight is it has a flex grid. Flexbox is a graphical layout mode of browsers that's in modern browsers. And so you, using Tailwind CSS, which is the CSS tools that I'm using, we can make flex layouts just by adding some CSS classes. That's what's going on here. So you can see in my app view, I have this heading to tag right here, and that corresponds to this link or this heading right there. So what I'm going to do is just wholesale copy this chunk right now and bring it in. And so I recognize that it's not pointing at the right thing yet. And in fact, this will probably blow up on us because it's going to try and fill in dates for this, and these links aren't going to work. So we'll clean this up. So first thing to do is replace this H1. Oh, I guess I was referring to H2. That's not right. It's actually the H1 that's above. So I put this in the wrong section. Oops. Let's try that again. So I have this H1 tag that's right here, and we're going to put it in here. And you'll notice that, like, if I add the appropriate flex grow, so flex grow is a CSS class that tells this particular flex box to push at the next element as far over as it can. And in the default layout, we're actually in a row layout. So it's going to, that's what the impact of this does. You can see that this is a flex grow. And so if we inspect this div element, you can see it's trying to push it over as far as it can. And then the rest of this stuff is taking up the amount of space that it was given. So we're going to do something very similar. And that's what's going on there. So we've got, in fact, I don't think you even need the daily view template anymore. So we've got now this flex grow added to our main title, and we can delete that, the old one, and then we can trim this down. So we need 2 of these because I'm only going to show 2 weeks, and so we'll trim off those. And for now, the actual URL is not correct, so I'm going to delete everything that's inside of here for the moment, and we'll fill this in later. And if you have any questions along the way, my chat is open. You know, I try and just ask that people be civil, and in the majority of cases, people are. So the other thing we need to do is that tomorrow and overmorrow are not going to be in the context. A fun fact: overmorrow means like not tomorrow, but the day after, and or yesterday is not yesterday, but the day before. That was something that that my wife pointed out, or we discovered together as we were doing this. But for the moment, I'm going to just say week of, and I don't know, what was last Monday. I just want this to be kind of reflective of reality right now, and then we're going to change it when we do the actual calculation in the view. So let's say week of, I'm doing my weeks based on Monday, so it'll be week of February 17th and week of March 2nd. Okay, so February 17 and week of March 2nd. And that should give us, if I did this right, the user interface that I would like to ultimately have for this app. Cool. It did. And see that I want things to be consistent. So my month naming will be Feb dot using a 3-letter month abbreviation with a dot. And that we'll get into in a second of how that's actually Django generating that using a template filter, template tag, I should say. And yeah, I think we have everything that we need. So the next thing to do is add the data that can even create these links, which means we need to add 2 pieces of context information to the view that we're in right now. So we can set the template aside, and I think what I want to do is, well, let's go ahead and give them names that I will call them. So we'll say previous week date. Yeah, let's be explicit. Better to be slightly more verbose than not. And next week date. Those will both be Mondays, but the template shouldn't have to care about that. In fact, now what I want to do is delete our mockup text. So we're going to put the data in as these 2 dates that we'll calculate, and then we'll check the whole template and what it looks like afterwards. And once that's done, we'll also use previous week date and next week date to help produce the URLs, but the views are not there yet. And if you missed previous conversation, I don't know how far back the scroll back shows. If you have comments on the question I'm asking is do you use class-based views or function-based views? We're working on views tonight. What do you like more and why? Feel free to chime in. All right, let's take a look at the views, and I'm going to do some test-driven development to get out the new data that we're going to add. So that should help. And we're going to bring up the core test views file. Come on. So we've got, I like to test the data in the context is what I expect it to be. So that's that's what we're testing. And there's no rhyme or reason why this is done this way, but I tend to use a convention of saying test has something, and so you can see that here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to take this test of, yeah, let's try this Monday. That should work. So my week view has to include the full range of dates for a handful of reasons that we don't need to go into. So we're going to take this Monday test, and we're going to leave most of this data the same. And say, so I'm going to replace it with whatever I want the context name to be called. Again, this is just my personal convention. There's no rhyme or reason for this. So test has previous week date, and we're going to say what we expect is we'll do previous week date, and we need to replace it with the Monday minus minus the time delta of 7. So previous Monday would be equal to Monday minus date time delta, if I could type, of days equal 7. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Usually a week is 7 days, usually. Time math is hard. You might be skeptical of why I would say usually 7 days, but there are historical cases where it is not for various reasons, I think. In fact, I think there's an entire website that has all of, like, not all, but a lot of really weird cases of when time and time zones and dates are not what you would expect them to be. You can go search for that. It's fascinating how hard of a problem time is. So we're going to check that this is true, and this, if I run this test right now, it should fail because we haven't put any key in the context. And so we can go up to the context area, the context method here, And you can see that I've got the context of Monday and the context of Sunday split out of the week. And so what I want to do is set context of previous week date equal to the context of Monday minus date time delta days equal 7. And if I did everything right, the test passes. So it gives me a high degree of confidence that what I'm doing is correct. So now we're going to do the same thing, just in the other direction. And so we want to say, I'm going to copy the same test because it's doing 99% of everything we need to do. And I'm going to change, just substitute previous with next, which changes the variable names for everything that we want. And we want to look ahead for 1 week. So now we're switching it around. Oops, I guess I should change this previous as well. So we've got a new test, and it should fail because it has no context there. And now I'm going to take the exact same line and put in next and change that to a plus. What do we get? Get another passing test. So at this stage, the view has the new should have the new data to make that work. And if all went according to plan, I should be able to refresh this page right now, and it will be identical to what is here, because we actually, is that right? Yeah, because it's this week is the week of February 24th, if you count the Monday. And so it should show exactly the same thing. And I'm hitting refresh, which you probably can't tell. There it goes. And you might have noticed, I don't know how well it shows up on the stream. There is a momentary flash of this like big black looking diamond or pyramid looking thing. And what it actually is, I think, is for some reason my styling, like Firefox is not styling the SVG icon for this home. Like you can see, notice that it's the first icon that appears here. And so there's a momentary moment. There's a point in time at which that SVG icon is in its default of just being as big as it can be, and the default color for the browser, which is black. So that's what shows up there. I don't know why that is. Frankly, it doesn't show up in Chrome. It seems like a Firefox bug or a bug with Tailwind CSS in Firefox. I'm not really sure. Thankfully, my wife uses Chrome, and that's who I'm targeting right now, so I'm okay with it. Long term, I'd like to figure out why that is, but just a little side thing. So we now have 2 links here, and they're not going anywhere. Whoa! That's not correct. Check that out. What it did there. Or maybe it is correct. Interesting. So it's abbreviating February, but it's not abbreviating March. That's strange. Okay, I gotta check that out. Django. So I'm using the default date filter that exists in the Django template tags, and we can go to it here. And so if given a date object or a date time object, if you in the template, let's go back to the template. If you use the pipe character, then you can put this date template tag after it, and it's called a filter. And the filter can take an argument with a colon and a string. It's kind of a weird syntax, but it's the way Django filters work. And the what goes in this string, this n and j, are special substitution variables that are defined by this table. And so you look up the table thing that you want, and that's how you get your date formatting in the proper the format that you desire. And so I selected, what did I just say? Capital N and J. Oh, okay. This is interesting. So apparently, this is the Associated Press style, and March in the Associated Press is not MAR dot. I don't think I like that. I think what I want instead is to have this use the M where it's always the 3-letter, because doesn't it look strange to you? I don't know. Maybe it's just my taste, but it looks pretty strange to me. To have, well, like you don't see it here, but to have this, one of these be a 3-letter with a period, and then one of them be 5 letters. That looks. I can understand how. You have to remember that Django came out of like a news organization supporting the Lawrence Journal World. I don't know. Sorry, you folks in Kansas. I'm getting your newspaper wrong, but anyway, it supported a newspaper. And so it makes sense that they have a styling in there to match Associated Press, which is, I'm sure, a common convention in many newspapers. But that's not what I want here. I'm doing this for text navigation and not a big body of prose. So let's change this. Let's change this to M and M. And as that, what I'll do though is there'll be a side effect that I won't like out of that. Oh, but it's unavoidable. So I could put a dot after Feb. That would work in nearly every case, but unfortunately, for me as an English person and any user who is also an English person, which is what this app targets, the month of May is a 3-letter word. So it would make no sense to abbreviate a 3-letter word or put a dot after something that is the end. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to live with just having no dot. That's probably okay. Similarly, I'm going to come over here and change this, and I'm going to change it in the daily template as well. You learn something. I learned something new about today about template tags and filters. Is there's a difference between the 3-letter month and the AP month. And had I just read the documentation better, I probably would have noticed it. But I think what I did is I was scanning this, just looking for, I probably was down here at the bottom, looking backwards, up, 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 and this is the first thing I saw as a 3-letter thing, and I just went with it. Which shows you should read all of the documentation. Okay, let's go over the daily view to fix that up while I'm thinking about it, and then we'll move on. So we're going to switch this to M, and go to here, 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 and here. That switches them all, and we can refresh the daily view. The only functional difference that should show up is that for this page, all of the dots will be dropped, which is exactly what happened. Okay. Good stuff. So we're ready now to, what are we ready to do? I think I'm ready to go back and make a new view. So I was thinking about, do I want to make an entirely new view, or do I want to make the same view except dates? And I guess I'd even need to highlight what kind of URL that I'm talking about. So we did this first step. We added the UI to look at the previous and next week's. Great. That's exactly what we want. The next bit is I need those links to look something like this format of weekly, and maybe I'll call it week. I don't know. I can be swayed either way. I guess I have daily, so weekly probably makes sense. And it needs to accept a year, month, day to pick the day that's going to be the start of the week and show the proper view. So I think what I'm going to do is just reuse the app view. I don't know that this is the right long-term call, because eventually there might, if my app view is meant to be the destination that you go when you get logged in, and it is meant to be like full of more information than just the week view, then it's not going to make sense over the long term to have my weekly view also have all this extra stuff. But that's not my reality today, and I don't want to overcomplicate my app. So I'm going to do the simplest thing that I think is reasonable and make my app view accept year, month, and day, which is the behavior that I did for my daily view. And then we'll just have two URL routes that will route to the same view. And in order to prove that, we can take a look. Let's take a look at the core URLs file, and you can see how I did this for the daily view, which is the same exact kind of scheme. So you can see I have the daily view here, and it has this name, and then I did a similar one that has a more complex pattern, the more complex pattern match, and has a different name, so that I can do a different kind of lookup. So a lot of this will not be touching the app view yet. We have to change the data later, but the first thing that we can do is make this modification where we say weekly, and it's going to be weekly, and it's going to use an integer converter for year and an integer converter for month and an integer converter for day, just like in the view below. And so if you are unfamiliar with converters, they are Django's, they came in Django 2, I guess, when we started getting path rather than URL. And they're a nicer syntax than the regular expression syntax that used to be available, although it's still available. But what it'll do is it'll parse the URL, look for things that look like integers, and try and cast them to integers. And if they don't, like if I had a route that said weekly/mat, then it's not going to match the pattern. So it'll only match the stuff that looks like integers, which is what we want, because we need to extract this to produce a date. And then I'm going to change this name to weekly. And yeah, that feels pretty good. So I think given that, I can produce the proper URLs. And what's going to happen right now is essentially I'm going to create these URLs, and they're going to go to the app view, and it's not going to behave any differently at all because I haven't touched the app view code. But we will modify that code so that it will factor in the week and look up different sets of data. But let's keep working on the template to do one thing at a time. We're going to come over to these things that I had stubbed out with a hash, and we're going to change it to URL. We'll say weekly, and we have to give it the 3 parameters that go into the week of year, month, and day. We're going to pull that from the previous week date, and that will be .year, and previous week date .month, and previous week date .day. And then we close off the URL call. We'll do the same thing here. And let's get rid of the hash at the end. But we need to change previous to next like we did earlier. So let's do a refresh on the main page and see if we got that right. No, So I use namespacing on these views. So weekly is not correct. It actually needs to be core weekly because this view is defined in the core app that I have. So now we've got these two. And again, if you're joining in and you have questions in the chat, feel free to ask. The question I'm asking everybody today that you're welcome to not answer if you don't know Django, but welcome to answer if you've had some experience, is what kind of views do you like to use? Do you use class-based views or function views? And which one do you like and why? Yeah. So let's look at the template that we have now and see if we got this reverse right this time. Okay, so when I'm hovering over this, I now see weekly 2020/2/17 and weekly 2020/3/2, which is exactly what I want. And so I'm going to click this, and what's going to happen is nothing yet. You will see that this will all still read exactly the same. The only thing that will happen that I believe you can see, I don't think I have my top bar covering it up, is this URL will change from /app/ to that weekly URL. So loading up this data, and cool, now it's showing this view. Okay, so the next step that I can envision in this process is to fix the weak boundaries that are in the app. So let's do that. So let's actually come to the view this time. And I don't know if I'm going to write the test first for this step. We might just kind of spike forward on it to see if I can get it. And then we'll come back afterwards. In fact, okay. So here's where this needs to change. I added today to the context, but that might not be what I want to call it. Let's see if that today is used anywhere in here. Yes, it is. And okay. All right, maybe I'll keep it called today for now because it doesn't really matter from the point of view of the app. Class-based views forever. Why is that, Archelli? Archelli? I'm sorry if handles are hard to pronounce. What do you like about class-based views over functions? Curious. So what we need to do is we need to detect if the year, month, and day have been provided, and if they have, then try to put a date together and replace the today with that particular date. And you also can see, well, never mind. Don't worry about the actual current date. So I'm actually going to come down and steal that from this daily view because I had the same exact problem that I had to solve there, and it's this chunk of code. Okay, easy to implement and understand. I buy that. I think it's interesting you say that. So I think some people, I have coworkers. For instance, I work at a place that does a lot of Django. In fact, I'm wearing my company swag tonight, my Doctor on Demand jacket here, and they're of the mindset that function-based views are actually easier for them to handle. And I guess it depends on how complex your views get. Your views can get huge. Or if you're not careful, your views can get huge and can be hard to understand. But I can totally see your point of view. Okay. Yeah, that's a good call. Starting to switch them over to class-based views. So what we have here is I'm extracting the parameters, and what I need to do for the moment is set today equal to day. And I'm not sure I actually like that long term, because I think what's going to happen if this week view ends up being like the daily view, which I suspect it will be, I'll have to do some interesting kind of calculation. But I'll skip that step right now because it might bore you with the details. But that should be enough, I think, to get this particular view to change to the dates that should be for this week, 17th through whatever, 23rd. No, did not. Why not? What happened? Ah, okay. I see what happened. I set the context to the day, but I did not do the week boundary calculation with this value. So what needs to go in here instead is the day instead of today. Cool. Okay. So this appears to work at some level. It fetches data. That seems right. What is probably not right about it is is it fetching the right data. Okay. And this is something I had to learn from my daily view was wrong. And let's see this, because I just fixed this on Sunday actually, and had to go through some hoops to get it to go. So we have this daily view, and you can see, in fact, let's bring it. It is on the right day. Let's just refresh it to make sure that this page is showing what we want. You can see that my son had some work here for this chapter 4 of this book. I'm using this is actually real data from my kid's stuff, but I brought it in locally, so this is not reflective of true time, but it works for this as a sample set. And what the behavior that my spouse wanted is she wants to have this be a look ahead of saying, if tomorrow is there, and assuming that he did the work today, like tomorrow should be showing chapter 5 if that's the next assignment. So we look ahead, and what we'll see, what we will see is still more of chapter 4. Why is that? That's not right. Maybe there were 2 assignments in chapter, I don't know. Not exactly sure. Maybe there's an off by 1 error in there that I have to fix. I don't know yet. But if we look ahead far enough, we can see there is chapter 5. So there's future data. And what will happen in this current weekly view is that if we do that look ahead, it's not actually going to do to be pulling these forward-looking stuff. Oh, there's interesting. There are 2 of those entries for chapter 4. I don't know why. Maybe it was a big chapter. But now I feel better about it. So if I go ahead to the next week, all of this data is still going to be pinned to whatever is the latest of chapter 4, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 5. When really what it should be doing is, I guess, showing a different, maybe a whole totally different book if she's like looking for it ahead in school. And let's confirm it. So we're going ahead a week, and yeah, it's showing that behavior. So this is where it got tricky for me for the daily view. And what it meant was when I calculate this view, I have to look up the tasks that are associated with these courses based on an anchor point of what is today in reality, so that when the view is looking ahead, it knows how far of an offset to look ahead into the tasks. I don't know if that fully makes sense, but we'll dig into the data and you'll start to see why. But I think before I do that, I think what I want to do is go ahead and change this context to today, because today is not going to be the right thing. We're going to need today as the anchor point when we're doing comparisons that you'll see in a second. So I want to change the context to a different thing. So let's bring up the test views again, because there's going to be a test that should break when this happens. So let's change it to day as appears here. And let's also go to the template view itself and change today, wherever it appears in these 4 places, to, well, hold on. Okay, this is too small to see. The problem with working from a Mac screen, it's just too small. I want to change today, but there's also in here this other day. So I don't want to shadow the variable. So I kind of need to rename this one first of all of these days before I get that wrong. Otherwise, I'm not going to know which one's day and which one's today. So let's go from the top, look for day. And we're in this is the for loop where we need to change this. So I'm going to call this, let's call it a course schedule day instead of day. I like the shorter name day, but what can you do? Course schedule day. Course schedule day. I'd rather be a little bit more explicit and get stuff clear, like when it's, because the next time I'm coming through, it's very clear what the day is referring to, even if it is a little bit longer in the template. Okay, we're back at the top. So changed all those. Those should be good. Just as a sanity check, let's refresh this page, see if everything still looks right. It does. So now I want to change today to be day. Yeah, I think that's what I want. And if everything still works, okay. We've got, oh, this is interesting. Okay, because I changed it from today, we're looking ahead in the future. And so it's highlighting the best it can highlight. It's highlighting the Monday. So that's actually going to be broken. If I go back and it's the current week, look, it's highlighting Monday. That's tricky. So the app view will highlight the right day. But when we have locked it into a specific day by going back and forth, it will pin it to Monday. I'll fix that later. It's one of those things that's like, she might notice and complain about that, which is fair. It's wrong, but I don't want to fix it right now. I'm also noticing that, look at the positioning of this stuff. It appears that the week labels are like lower, but I think that my daily view has the week labels in line at the same vertical height. Yeah, it does. So there's something that also that must have changed about the styling, or that's slightly different that I lost in the process. So let's take care of that first, because I just want stuff to be nice and consistent. So it's about noticing the small things sometimes. And yeah, it's one of those small details that it's worth paying attention to. So we're going to come back up here and look at what's different. So it's got items. The row has items center, which is good. And the daily view has the same. Ah, the margin bottom. So I don't want that. Instead, I want to put that on the next thing. Or maybe, no, let's move it up here. MB8, I think is what we want. So that effect should, and I bet we can see this if we highlight this thing. Currently, the H1 has a margin bottom, and you can see when I highlight that it's not applying to this, so that makes this thing look off. So even though the items are supposed to be centered, it's trying to center it in the container, but it's just not doing the right thing. So now that if we refresh it, it's going around that whole Flexbox container and lines things up. So subtle things, right? Sometimes you overlook things and catch them later. Okay, sorry for that tangent. I promise we'll get to this. So we're gonna leave the highlighting bug of flipping back and forth 2 weeks alone for now, and focus on the data bug, which is the more important one. So there's 2 categories of what needs to happen: dealing with the past and dealing with the future. Dealing with the past is interesting because ideally the stuff should be the work should be done. And when this work is done, you can't really see it in any of these views, but these cells get grayed out, showing that those tasks are done. And so I don't really want to try and fill up a week with a bunch of... It's just going to be a weird thing. So I'm not sure the proper slice that's the right way to look at that. I think it's a combination of the work that was done that week plus whatever is the current week's worth of work. But that's a less important case. It's, like I said, the primary use case is to make sure that the future looks right so that she can do forward-looking planning. So let's look at the view, and I can show you why this is broken. So this is a pretty big view, and it's got quite a bit going on. It queries a lot of data, has to do a lot of stuff because it's pulling in from all sorts of different models and places in the app. So when we're going to look at this, we need to get to look at the set of how it gets the set of tasks for each course. That's the place that we want to test this properly. And that is done by, the breakdown is, I call these things schedules for each student. And so the context renders, it loops over the schedules for the student. And the schedule includes the student themselves along with their individual course listings. And so I've got some helper methods for this context as we dive deeper and deeper. And it gets down to, this is the particular spot that we have to solve for. So I'll walk you through this method, what it does, and then highlight the point that is broken. And we can then work to fix that. So the first thing that we need to do is find all of the completed work for the student for all of these courses. So the student is in a grade for a year, and they're in a handful of courses, or I guess when you're an elementary kid like mine are, you can be in quite a bunch of different courses because they're all fairly short. And so we have to query all of those courses and say, tell me everything that's already done so that we can project on what is left to do for each of these courses. So I started by getting the list of courses. That's this variable here. Whoops, I don't want to delete it. I want to highlight it. That's this variable here. And the model that I have for when a student completes something in a course is, I called it coursework. And coursework is connected to a task. So I don't want to burden you with too many details, but just so you can see it. The course is the core thing, and then a course is made up of a collection of tasks. So the course is really little more than a container, and the grade level is nothing more than a container of courses. So we've got these tasks that are the things that we actually want to show. That is the real work, and what is like the books that have to be read and stories that have to be looked at and math that has to be done and all of that stuff. So I'm pulling out those IDs because I don't really care about the coursework objects themselves. That's just the record that somebody has done it. I care about the tasks that are associated with the coursework. And we're going to use that as a filter to exclude things. So you can see this big gnarly comment here as I couldn't find a way to do this query all at once on the task table. So I had to do it in a loop, which is not optimal, but it worked for this, and there was a discussion on it that I can review later if it becomes a big performance bottleneck. So what happens is we do one query to get all of the completed tasks for the school year, and then we build up the data structure that is going to be returned as the context, which contains a student and will ultimately contain the list of courses to iterate through. And then we go through one course at a time, and we say, give me all of the courses, the course tasks, but exclude all of the completed tasks. That's what that line is doing that's important. And it also happens to be where this is broken, and I'll point that out in a minute. And for reasons that elude me at the moment, I had to reverse this. Why did I have to reverse that list? I don't remember. And that's going to come back and bite me. I'm sorry, I'm stopping to think about this because it might be relevant for this flow down below. I think it is, but I can't recall why. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see why now. So I did this by looping through the dates that are going to be set in for the course. And if I didn't do this reverse that I did here, then this pop operation would be slow. So what you can see in line 102 here is that I take the query set and I evaluate it and put it into a list. And so that gives me the set of tasks. And so what needs to happen is I need to essentially fill in each task into each day of the week. And in order to do that, you could do one of two things. You could either remove an element from the front of a list. This is all backwards for me and you. I think if this is my front, I think it's the back for you, so I'm going to try and get it right over here. So you can remove something from the front of a list, but in Python, what that's going to do is slide all of the elements over and copy them. That's bad because it involves a memory copy. So instead, what I did is I said, take all of the elements in that list and then reverse them. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to use the pop operation. And pop is something that will take an element off the end of a list. And when you're taking an element off of the end of a list, it doesn't have to affect any of the other elements that are already there. So you don't have to do any copying of stuff around. So it was probably a premature optimization to put in reverse and pop to do this. I probably could have just done a remove and it would have been fine. But that's why I made this choice. And in fact, now that I'm here and I'm having to talk through this and I don't remember why I did this, I'm going to put it in a comment to remind myself in the future. And we'll say, for the performance of pop below. So I won't forget that in the future. Okay, so it goes through each weekday and does some calculation. It almost doesn't matter at this point. What's really, this part down here is stuff that we aren't going to need to touch. What we need to touch and what's critically wrong is, unfortunately, this spot that has like the actual querying. And the part that's wrong is this chunk right here. It's doing a slice. This is the Python slice syntax, and asking for a limited number of tasks to pull. And that task is based on how many week dates need to be shown on that weekly view. So this number is going to be 5 for our context. So it's saying do a slice up to 5. And since Python is 0 indexed, and that will get through 0 through 4. But what really happens under the covers is this does a query on the database and uses the Django offset, the SQL offset in order to do the right slicing. No, that's not true. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It uses limit. That's what I meant to say. To do the proper filtering. In fact, why don't we do this? Let's take this and call this course query set, like so, and you'll see why. And I'm going to, because I don't want to mangle that and I want to keep it around, we'll just take a copy, I guess. So we'll have the course query set, and we can just say list on course query set. That should be equivalent. Oops. Which will then get fixed like so. And the reason I did this is I want to print out the course query set query so that you can see it. Something that Django can do is pretty cool. So this, now if I do this, we should get a bunch of SQL statements that get dumped out that it should show the limit. And we did. And it's a pretty gnarly thing because it also includes all of those completed IDs already. So, but if we continue to scan in here, I hope that we can see this. There it is. Limit. So put it in ascending order, limit by 5. Okay. So that should only give us, and the reason I did a limit by 5 is there's no point in getting all of the tasks for the future. I just need to be able to fill in these 5 slots for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so the thing that we need to do is make sure that we include some offset logic. And that offset is going to be however many tasks we're into the future. So to make that concrete, like we need 5 tasks for this week, but if we're looking ahead to next week, we want the next 5 tasks. So it should be like the simple and unfortunately naive solution would be to say, look at how many weeks we're off here and say that the offset is going to be equal to perhaps the task limit times 2, like if we're 1 week ahead. Or sorry, that's not even correct. If we're only 1 week ahead, it would be a task limit of 1. So we would start at record 5 and say, give me the next 5. That's not correct for a couple of unfortunate reasons. The primary unfortunate reason that is not true for every course is that not every course runs on every day. And I haven't shown it here, but in fact, let's go modify this course to be more reflective of reality. So PE, you can see that there's some stuff that we have in here that my son has done, some indoor tennis and some tumbling class. And if I go to this functionality to edit courses, we can select which days the course runs on. And so I can say, I know that my son only does indoor tennis on Thursday, okay? And so now, when I look at the app view, what it should do is, looking at PE, it's only going to fill in for that one day. Okay, so now we're equipped with the knowledge that we need to look at why this naive version of the offset calculation is wrong. Because if I say the offset is 5, well, that doesn't make sense here. 5, when you only have a class that runs once a week, is 5 weeks in the future, right? So we have to say, for each course, how many days do you run on, and figure out what that offset is supposed to be. That's the tricky part of this, and it's what makes this harder to test. And it's just sort of the unfortunate reality. So I think, where does that leave us? I think, because I'm already looking at an hour, and I know that that's a lot of information to absorb. And so what I'm probably going to do is not do that tonight. What do we have? Let's review this, and we can see this, and I can comment it on the future. But I don't want to belabor this, because what I found is there was someone on the stream on Sunday, and he asked me, or I asked the question of, like, what kind of problem do you want to tackle, and the individual wanted a logic problem, and so we solved this problem for the daily view. And then by the end, I asked him, like, well, how was that? And he said he slightly regretted it. So don't blame him. It's pretty finicky stuff, and it's pretty particular to my problem domain. So I think just describing what the problem is probably enough, and I will probably go solve it on my own time and not subject the stream to that again. But we can review what we did, because I think we did a lot of good stuff here and made a lot of progress. We now have a weekly view, the ability to jump forward and backward in time, and that view is anchored to the right date. So currently it does a lookup of the data that's best it can. It doesn't factor in the offset yet, but that is something that can be done without too much struggle. So looking at the diff, we wrote a couple of tests to add the previous week and the next week to the context. We added the actual URL to go to the previous week and next week, but we pointed at the same app view because that was convenient. And I modified the app view to look for those variables in the context, and if they had values, create a date to work from. And so we had to tweak a couple of things, and this is where we added it to the context. Then I showed you how the schedule building works and why I did this unusual, maybe not unusual, but not common reverse trick to do some performance tuning, which was probably unnecessary. And then we did some template modification to actually show the stuff, and then modified some variables in here. And yeah, that, oh, and I guess I forgot we also changed the month labeling. I'm doing well. I don't even know how to say your username, Diagram to Platinum. But welcome. So I think that's going to bring us to an end for the evening. And okay, well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. So next time I will jump in wherever I'm at. I'm hoping. So I'm hoping to get really close to having something that my wife will be using as an actual customer. I think I've mentioned this in previous streams, but I've been doing a bunch of stuff offline because I'm trying to get it to a point where she can start using the app. Because if you're building your own software as a service, what is more valuable than anything is having actual customers that can help drive out what is it they really want. So my wife is emblematic of a homeschool mom because that is literally what she's doing. She's teaching my children. And so she is the perfect person for this app. So my plan, once she provides feedback and can start to tell me what is wrong and what's insufficient about the app, is inform what I have to do to make it a solid, usable tool for her. And if I can make that tool adequate for her, and she has high standards, which is good, it should extrapolate to other users. So there's a piece of this that I haven't even touched on yet. I'm just doing it the building way of building the SaaS first, and that's actually not the recommended approach for doing a software as a service. But with this particular project, it's more about serving a need for my family and then trying to extend it. So I'm going in with a very different point of view as from compared to my last SaaS. But my plan is, once the app is in a good working functional state and actually does the job and is minimally viable, to start seeking out other people who are also homeschoolers that could actually use the app. And I think that's where things will really start to get interesting, is finding out what are the customer requirements that come from people that are actually using things and what's their experience, because you can only work on speculation for so long before it becomes not very valuable. So I think that's where I'm going to call it for the night. Thank you for joining in. It was good discussion tonight. Hopefully you learned something about Django. I appreciate the time, and take care.